2 thumbs up.
Yeah.
I agree totally on that.
Oh, we lost him again.
So I'm the general manager of Geeks and Games. We're a tabletop store that's based here in Qatar. We do a lot of events with cafes and some institutions like schools and summer camps and clubs, and we do primarily trading card games, board games, and Lego robotics.
For everybody that's watching, my name is Rick. I'm the host and creator of a program called Rollz America, where I was traveling around the United States, going to friendly local game stores, doing live stream content to spotlight the store, the community they're building, and how they engage with the community beyond the store. Previously I worked for Alliance Game Distributors as their media production manager for Game Trade Media, making all sorts of fun content that some of you may have seen out in the universe on the interwebs or not. If not, no surprise. But we are here to talk about, at least the first 45 minutes of this program, to talk about tabletop gaming. If you guys have any questions in the chat, please ask them. I see that there are some questions that have been asked below. What's the best website for board game news and releases? Jason, what would your answer to that be?
I would say it would definitely be Board Game Space or BoardGameGeek.com.
Yeah, I actually put Board Game Geek as my answer to that. Then there's some miniature questions, and we'll get to those ones during the miniature painting session. Jason, what would you say is a great introductory game to get new players to the table?
There's a lot of interesting gateway games, which are like the beginner games you can start with when you're getting into tabletop. So something like Carcassonne, which is easy, like a tile placement game, or a game where there's a lot of variants like Settlers of Catan. Mm-hmm. I would suggest that these would be an easy game to start off with.
One of the things I usually recommend, I actually wrote Catan or Ticket to Ride as a response to that question, because they're very much gateway games that get people into the tabletop space. But another thing is, if you know your friends, you know what they probably like. So a lot of people find like party games to be something really easy. I actually have an example here of one called Medium by Greater.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And this is a fun one where everybody's trying to think about what the other person's word is based on 2 words that have been played. It's super fun, but anything that is like this one here by Fireside Games. This is a game of charades, but all you're using is they'll give you some words, and you use a string to create that thing.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's super fun.
Unique concept.
Yeah. So I had a question for you, Jason, and again, anybody in the chat, if you have other questions, please ask. What is the climate like in regards to the type of games that are most sought after in Qatar?
Most people are used to playing abstract games. So if we discuss the abstract game category, they would start off with something like checkers or drafts or chess. So this is what people think of when they think of a board game. I'm speaking locally, like with the Qatari community or with like people from the subcontinent like India or Pakistan. So this is what their perception is. And then a lot of people think of like Monopoly or Life or Risk as like a starter board game or something that they started out with. So we tend to start people off with gateway games. Okay. There's some games where there's some ways where they will have to decipher some information, or like a team play game like One Night Werewolf. Right. Or Code Names is also a really good one. We actually have Code Names translated into Arabic now. So there's a localized version. So it depends on the demographic. As Qatar is made up of a wide community of expats and Qataris as well, there's different tastes when it comes to games.
Okay.
Yeah. So people have some people like simple games where there's not a lot of reading or writing, and then there's some other people who like games that are very skill intensive, where you have to think a few turns ahead, or you have to have some planning involved.
You said that in Qatar, abstract games seem to be a really popular version. Have you seen this one?
Shobu?
Shobu, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is such a great abstract game. It's super popular here in the States. And I think that's really funny that you mentioned abstracts as a popular game in Qatar, and also where they think about Monopoly and life. I mean, it's the same mindset here in the States. If someone isn't already a adapter to tabletop gaming or has it in their life, when you bring it up to them, it's like Monopoly. Yes, absolutely.
This is the go-to.
It should be something that's thriving here because we have this thing here in the GCC. All right, in Kuwait it's called Diwania. Here in Qatar it's called Majlis. All right, so basically pre-corona, every Friday night or Thursday night, a group of guys will get together in like a little, kind of like a clubhouse, I guess you'd call it. It's like a building that's either added on to the outside of the building or it's its own little thing. And then they all go and then they play games, drink coffee, gawa, whatever. And then they just talk and they chill for like most of the night. You know, people have game tournaments and everything. I went to one with Hamid El Amari, the Qatari comedian here, and they were playing this card game, which was like a Western called like Shoot, Shoot, Bang or something.
Oh, it's
Bang the Dice game?
Jason, you know what it is.
Bang, yeah.
Yeah, they were playing that and they were crazy into it. Now in Kuwait, there's a huge D&D and Warhammer, Pathfinder, all that stuff scene. But here, it doesn't seem quite as big. I don't know. What do you think, Jason?
It depends on a lot of factors. The thing is, like what we were speaking about earlier, the simpler games are more popular. So like the abstract style, and then I would say after that would be like the area control type of games, which Bang could kind of fall into. You have a turn and you have an action, and it's kind of competitive, whereas you can interact with another player or eliminate them. So these are the style of the games that are liked. If you look at the historical games that are played in the majlises here in Qatar, like Brasilia, like the card games and stuff like that, it's easy to transition with the card game first before getting into like a full-size boxed board game. So like Bang is perfect. It's a very good example of a entry-level game that's popular here. Exploding Kittens is another one that's really, really popular.
If you were to recommend like one of the more advanced ones, like Warhammer, because I know there's two types of Warhammer. There's 40K and then the more fantasy-driven one.
Yeah.
Right.
Age of Sigmar, yeah.
Especially now that they have like 3 new starter sets and stuff like that. What do you think would be like the best one? Because I know there's D&D, there's Pathfinder, there's Warhammer, and then there's what's the one I used to like until the show ruined it? Game of Thrones.
Warhammer as a game is kind of interesting because there's 2 entry points at the moment. The one entry point is your standard 40k game, where you assemble an army according to a points cap, and you play against each other. But there's a new version of Warhammer 40k that is really, really interesting at the moment. It's called Kill Teams. It works on a smaller version of teams like squads, which is easier to pick up, less complicated when it comes to assembly and painting. So this is gathered quite a good following at the moment. And of course, price point. A really good 40k army could be like in dollars, $1,500, $2,000, which is about 5,000 to 7,000 reals. So it's quite an investment to put into a game if you don't know if you're really going to like it or not. To play Warhammer or to like that universe, you kind of have to like the lore. It is a big selling point in that game.
Yeah, as far as Warhammer goes, I've painted hundreds of miniatures for Warhammer. I have never played the game. But I would say as an entry game, I like Dungeons and Dragons because all you need to do is get the DM guide, the player's handbook, and the monster manual, and that's really all you need. Everything else is just fluff to the game, but you can create your own worlds and verses and everything just using those 3 books, and that's a minimal investment for a long time of play.
D&D is a very popular game here in Qatar. I think over the last 3 to 4 years, there's really been an increase in the number of groups and players that are playing the game, meeting up to do campaigns, meeting up to do the regular Adventure League, which is sanctioned by the WPN, Wizards of the Coast. So you get special magical items. So somehow for the DM, it takes out some of the head work, because you get like a unique item for going to your store or popping into an event or playing through a campaign, which makes it interesting and relative to the story.
Can you take like, say, regional or local culture and apply that, like gins and stuff like that?
So in Dungeons and Dragons, djinns already exist, and they also have genasi as player characters. So you could play like a water or a fire genasi or an air genasi. Yeah, you can absolutely play djinns. I actually painted one about a week ago from WizKids. They made a beautiful djinn in their Wave 12, 11 or 12 line of miniatures, and so you can take obviously the cultural mythologies and legends of different regions and apply them to the game. Absolutely.
Yeah, WizKids have really upped their game on the miniatures in the last 2 years. I'm a HeroClix player. I have a golden and modern army from way back. It's not that popular in Qatar, but if you compare the miniatures from like 2013 and 2019, it's like chalk and cheese. It's you can see an example. The Griffin, that's like amazing. Yeah. If you looked at a Griffin like 3 years ago, you would think it would maybe it is an eagle or something.
Yeah, super tiny, two-dimensional, even though it's supposed to be three-dimensional. And this is, so for everybody watching, this one is coming out next month. So this is a sneak peek for everybody out here at the expo. Just to show you, again, just how beautiful it is. And we'll talk about more of that later.
You got like a whole box of those, didn't you?
I did. Yeah, WizKids sent me a lot of product to demo, paint, and promote. Yeah, I love it.
Now, I'm seeing a lot more content on YouTube and Twitch and stuff with Tabletop. Why do you think that is?
I'll let you go first, Rick.
Okay.
I think there's two different ways to approach this question.
Yeah, there really is. I think with COVID, one of the things that we saw when COVID hit is everybody bought webcams. Like literally, they were out for like 2 months. You couldn't find one at Best Buy. You couldn't order one off Amazon. And the community, because of COVID, everybody's stuck in their house. More people playing games. More people wanting to show off their games. And just because the ease of access to social media, not just YouTube, but like oddly, I've got TikTok running live right now as well. And on TikTok, I'm known as Tabletop Santa. And there are some gamer game creators on there that make content around gaming. They have 100,000 followers, and it's like, what? And they all are, they're joining together on Discord. I think Discord is a huge factor to that as well, because they're building great communities, and they can get together through those communities. And you're like, hey, I'm going to do a Zoom live stream, boom, and it's done. And it's insane how awesome it's becoming and how mainstream. And I think COVID has been a great asset to that point of life, but everything else, yeah.
Yeah, I know, right? What about you, Jason?
Yeah, to add on to what Rick was saying, painting is a very a hobby where you need a lot of time intensive. So having a lot of the spare time, or perhaps being at home, or having shortened working hours, has allowed people to dust off their shelves. Perhaps like have a go at a board game model to test out their painting skills, or finally get stuck into a model that's been on the shelf for a while that they'd like to try and paint. And then a lot of the products that have come out, I would say from the end of 2018 until now, are very beginner orientated. So you can see like a lot of starter learn how to paint models, learn how to cut, learn how to glue, where it was like you got a really complex model before, and it was very skill based, where you would have to have some skill to do assembly or paint or filing. So I think that they've really looked at a gap in the market and made something for new aspiring tabletop gamers or model builders.
The other day I was on YouTube, because obviously it's like basically how I make my living and everything. And there's a YouTube channel called Cosmonaut Variety Hour, and they did like a 30-minute video on Warhammer. And then like the first 20 minutes is him discussing, the different things and stuff. So it was really good. I liked it. I watched it twice just so I can you see a lot of the minutia and stuff. And then he actually linked to a lot of other creators, which was cool because a lot of YouTubers don't do that. But at the end, he actually did a thing where he sat down to, I guess, alleviate concerns of other people about the painting, because that's one of the biggest parts of not just Warhammer, but he did one of the Space Marines or whatever. He did one in like 20 minutes. So it showed me, it's like, wow, it's not that complicated, and he's not like an artist guy. So it got me between that and then the YouTube channel where the guy did all by himself, those really great cinematics of Warhammer. What is it called, like Atreus or something like that? It's got me really interested in, like, I want to do it now. I think, Jason, you're like the only place, right?
We have a range of tabletop games. There is a Warhammer community that's already based in Qatar. They meet up at players' houses and that, and we try to engage with them before. We hosted some tournaments and that. The issue with Warhammer is when you have a small community, people have very select needs. So, like you've mentioned, like let's say Rick wants to play Space Marines, but I want to play like Eldar, a Space Eldar, something. So, when people build their armies, you're looking for specific models. When you scale up and you want like a tank or a bigger unit, the thing is with Warhammer, they have a really good sales pitch where they have like internet exclusives and that which are not always available to local stores. So you're always competing with online in that aspect. And Warhammer from the UK would pretty much ship anywhere. If you were in Afghanistan, they would ship you a model. There wouldn't be an issue like to get that. So that's killed a lot of the availability problems that they had before. And if you look at Games Workshop module, especially in the UK, they own a lot of the stores. There's a different model to working like in the UK, US or South Africa, for example, where they've been in the market for like, correct me if I'm wrong, Rick, like 30 years now. They started in the mid-80s. So they have that financial clout or ability to provide these gaming rooms or war gaming rooms or Games Workshop areas, and then also provide limited edition content and stuff like that as well. So it's a game where you need a big community to thrive for the competitiveness of it, and to be able to have a lot of variance and play against different armies and have access to different models and stuff.
Is there a Wheel of Time one?
There are Wheel of Time board games, but I'm not familiar with a miniature-based one. But I know that there are Wheel of Time board games. Is that a popular series there?
No, I don't know, maybe, but it's going to be soon because Amazon's doing the show and everything. 2
tabletop games that have come out recently is Song of Fire and Ice from Game of Thrones. I know that Rick is planning to paint that. And then there's a new Marvel game that came out in a kind of weird time last year. So that's really taking the tabletop community by storm. The models are not very difficult to paint, and it's kind of like a paint by numbers thing, where if you look at Warhammer or some of the other games, you have to be like a little bit creative. I mean, they do have a guideline for like color schemes and that, but you can pretty much do your own thing. Like, let's say you're playing in a Marvel game, you wouldn't see a pink Spider-Man. Like, there would be a color scheme. So that's easier for new players, if I could put it like that.
Yeah, that game is called Crisis Protocol, and it's by, I can't remember, but Crisis Protocol, it's Marvel's Crisis Protocol. It's really good.
I'd rate it 9 out of 10. Yeah.
The miniatures are ridiculously good. Like, I was like,
they're so good.
Yeah.
I haven't even seen it. It must be very new.
The problem is, it's so popular, it's hard to get your hands on stuff. I don't know what it is like stateside, Rick, but with us being under European distribution for the GCC, it's kind of difficult. Yeah.
So, can I ask that question? Again, that's a question I've been asking a lot of the publishers here before coming onto this program, because I wanted to make sure that they had their product availability to Qatar. Is it Asmodee that's distributing from Europe to y'all, or is it somewhere? Is it another big distribution? And if whether that is maybe some of the publishers I work with, and get in touch with them to make sure that they can get product to you guys.
Okay, so our general distribution for the GCC falls under a company called Board Game Space Middle East. They're currently based out of Dubai, but for the last 2.5 years, we faced a lot of problems due to the geopolitical situation that we have here with the blockade. So this has really narrowed the amount of products we can bring in and the types of products we can bring in. So previous to this, we do have an agreement with them. We do represent Qatar for selling and distributing games under Board Game Space, but it's been hard to act on that. So I would say they have about 15 active licenses. Asmodee, they are under Board Game Space, so all Asmodee games are sold by them for the whole Middle East region. So that includes like Lebanon, Syria as well, and then the GCC. So this is their scope. But like it is difficult to convince them to send the games out here, and more so when it comes to support like special store edition championship product like championship kits. I think you'll know about them, Rick, or like something like a limited edition or store exclusive. These are harder to get. I think the best company overall that gives us support in the GCC is Wizards of the Coast, which is Magic the Gathering and D&D, pretty much is their two flagship games.
Do they make Pathfinder too?
They do not. No, that's Paizo Publishing.
In Kuwait, I actually met a guy named Jason who wrote a lot of the Pathfinder stuff, like the steampunk things. But yeah, he was deep into it, man. I didn't realize how big. I had never heard of it, and then he was like, "Oh yeah, I wrote this book and this book and this book." And
yeah, to give you some context about tabletop games and the influence that players have in our region, the X-Wing Miniatures playtesters. Two of the top playtesters are based in Kuwait for Fantasy Flight. Wow. Yeah, so they play that many games and they have that kind of community. A good game in Kuwait is the Board Game Store, and they actively play over there. They also have Board Games Dojo and Tam's Hobbies. So in a country which is also like a city-state, similar to Qatar, they have 3 hobby gaming stores. Wow. So and then they have a specialized store for Yu-Gi-Oh as well, which is it's called Dueling Masters, which has got no board games and no hobby gaming. So they have 4 stores.
Yeah, because when you look at Kuwait compared to a lot of the other places in the region, there is less to do. So a lot of the arts and a lot of the hobby stuff is a lot bigger there, even though it's a smaller country. Just like social media, Kuwait is one of the biggest users in the world. They were one of the first countries to get Instagram and everything. And it's why their influencer scene is so huge as well.
I saw that we had some questions in the Ask Questions area.
Yeah.
And I saw one that was super funny. If you don't mind, I would like to answer the question. It says, can you tell if someone is a tabletop gamer when you first meet them? The answer is yes. I thought that was such a funny question. But the answer is yes. I personally assume everyone is a tabletop gamer when I first meet them because I hope that they are, right? Because if they're at a convention or at a store, you hope that's the case. But a stereotypical gamer, oddly, looks like me. Tall, heavy set, bearded, always carries a backpack with all their games in it. So, yeah, we all look alike.
I think you can also judge it by the interest level. If you say some special keywords like, do you know what Fantasy Flight is? Or do you know what Asmodee is? Or one of the other popular like Rio Grande or Days of Wonder. Yeah. So these are like kind of like geek slang or lingo that you'd hear people talking about, like, or saying, hey, have you guys heard about Biza Games or the new game that's coming out? Or
it looks like Amriki got a little bit of frozen camera going on. Okay. But I like that pose. He's like, yeah. Games.
I think there's another question here that we can answer. Are there any good tabletop games that can be played while social distancing? Our community here, through the power of Discord that Rick spoke about earlier, is playing a lot of code names, and then Steam also has a lot of board games that you can play with on your Steam account, like Memoir 44. I'm sure you know about that one, Rick, from Days of Wonder. That's actually for free on Steam. So if you want to play a game and you have a Steam account and you have Discord, that's a really good place to meet other board gamers.
Yeah. So
that's for Jetzilla.
Yeah, and to carry on that question and answer, there's a new platform called Tabletop Simulator, and so many publishers are putting their games on there that you log in, you go through the catalog, you find, I want to try this by this publisher. And because of Gen Con Online this past weekend, there was a huge use of the Tabletop Simulator platform. So yeah, and you can play when you get on Tabletop Simulator again. You can play with anybody in the world, which is amazing.
That's true.
And all the games that almost every game that was premiered at Gen Con last weekend is on Tabletop Simulator now. So it's amazing to think that is a great way to connect not just gamers but the world of gaming to everybody on a platform like that. So amazing.
Would you recommend that people get that? Because I'm not sure if it's free or if it costs. You can get it on Steam. Because I know you can try out the games. Like you can try out Warhammer or A Song of Fire and Ice on there.
It's about 50 reals in the Steam store for Tabletop Simulator. About $15.99 US, I'd guesstimate somewhere around there.
Yeah, something like that. It's like $15 or $20 US, and
it's well worth it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I don't know if every game on there is free access. There might be some pay to play, and if so, again, I think it's worth it because if I wanted to play Shobu with somebody across the waters, how awesome is that? And if it cost me $19 to have it in my library of virtual games, I would absolutely pay something like that.
Could you use that if you're a DM to maybe try out like a scenario that you were thinking of?
Absolutely. But also for D&D and other tabletop role-playing games, there is Roll20.net, and which is kind of like what we're doing right now, except there's a map system. So if you want to build your own maps and show where your characters are and everything, you can do all that on that platform in conjunction with D&D Beyond. They communicate very well together. So there's so many. Again, I think that also links back to your earlier question: is why are we seeing such an increase in content creators and YouTubers and everything doing this? Is because there's so many tools that make it so easy, like Tabletop Simulator, like Roll20, like D&D Beyond.
I've been watching your stuff, because you're everywhere. Like you're like me. You put out so much content, it's hard to keep up with.
Yeah. It was funny. A lot of the content I create, people don't even see.
You're putting a lot of TikTok stuff up, and then you've got, I think you're streaming too, and then you have the videos.
Mm-hmm.
Have you talked about yet, like, your whole, like, I'm just gonna do like Kane and Kung Fu, but for tabletop, or what?
So I haven't. I didn't really. I kind of in the beginning kind of talked about I traveled to the United States and doing all that stuff, but no, I haven't really talked about what my vision is for how I want to promote, because I'm all about promoting gaming because it was such a big part of my life coming up. The little story time for your audience. So I was in foster care coming up in high school. And during that time, being put in the foster care system is kind of a dark space. And I found gaming, and I found a gaming community, and they brought me in under their wings, and like their dragon wings, and they're playing D&D and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Justifiers RPG and Magic the Gathering when it comes out. And then it literally like kept me safe in a safe zone. Then I joined the military, and then for 20 years I'm in the military, and no place I went did I not find another gamer or a game store or someone to share in the hobby with. And again, when you're overseas, like when I was in Kuwait, I played D&D all the time. So it's like it's always been a part of my life, and I want to make sure that I can share that with the community of out there, people that are already engaged in gaming and people that are on the fringe that see it and are like curious. Hey, what is that thing? Why are they so happy around that table? Right? Come to my table, play the games. That's what I'm all about. And that's my main message: is everybody's welcome and everybody should play.
I think that tabletop gaming brings a lot of people together that usually wouldn't be in the same circles. Like, it's a good way to meet new friends. If you're a little bit introverted, it's a good way to meet new people. Also, like, if you've come out to Qatar and maybe you're struggling to find friends, it's a good medium to find some people that have similar likes. Like, you may be into Star Wars or fantasy or something like that. So I think a lot of people have built a lot of long-lasting friendships around the board game table or through a D&D campaign.
Oh, absolutely.
One thing I want to talk about too, it's a little personal kind of thing, is I was foster care, and then I joined the military to be a firefighter medic. And then all along, though, from when I was a kid until growing up, I was all into gaming and geek stuff. When you used to get made fun of for it, you know what I mean? And then once I got out and became a filmmaker and everything, I started talking about movies and games and stuff more to people. So what was it that made you? I mean, I know you're trying to like spread the message and everything. It's the same thing with you, Jason. Like, this isn't normal. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's geeks and then there's us, right? So what made you become that?
I think it's hard. It was harder in our generation. I always tell like the new kids that are playing games now, it's very easy to be a geek nowadays because there's a lot of things like the mainstream, Marvel, DC. I mean, I remember when I started playing Magic around 1999. When I was in school, the people used to like pick on us, try and grab our cards and destroy them. You know, we had like some crazy cards from like Urza Saga and stuff back then. So yeah, it was different. It was a different time. Yeah, if you like comics, Spider-Man and stuff wasn't that mainstream. I think it started to pick up around 2002 when Marvel had like the start of their first MCU universe with the first trilogy of Spider-Man movies and stuff. And I mean, there were people that liked Star Wars and people that loved Star Wars. If you had like some collectibles or something, you would definitely be like a black sheep. It wasn't something that was like common. I mean, I grew up in a different place to you guys. Like, I grew up in Africa, so I think it was like a double stereotype, because it was like you like something which is like not a cultural norm and something that was like very weird from the status quo of what a normal kid is supposed to like. That's from my side, speaking about where I come from.
So as far as for me, I think what it is because, again, the community that I grew up with was super accepting and kept me engaged in that community for 30 plus years. But the thing that really made me change my focus and why I wanted to do what I do now, and kind of like how you do, is I had kids. And when my kids started showing interest in the things that I showed interest in, it made me want to make sure that they didn't have to deal with the bullies and the individuals that didn't understand it and then spoke poorly of it, so that they don't have to witness that. So if I can spread the message out so that my kids have a better experience in gaming, I think that's one of the big reasons I do it too, because all of my kids are fans of tabletop in some capacity. Obviously, my two boys are just, I mean, if it's Xbox and computer, streaming on Twitch or what have you, and that's what they want to do for their life. That's my youngest is like, I can make money playing video games. Yes, buy me a chair, Dad. Give me a good system. I'll spend every hour of every day. So I think that's one of the big reasons is why I wanted to spread the messages for my kids.
How do you balance gaming and hobbies and all that stuff with, even if you don't have kids, like your job and everything else? How can you find that healthy balance?
It's tough, especially, again, when I have kids that play games and want to play games. So I'm not married. My kids, some of my kids are grown, are 28 and 25 years old, have their own lives and do their own things, right? And then I have my 14 and 16-year-old. And I try to balance it to what best benefits them. Like, when they have time for me, I give them my time. But because my life, and like you said, I make a lot of content. It's like I almost never stop. I have a notebook by me all the time. Then I'm writing down like, okay, that sounds like a good thing, or I should reach out for that. So it's just my life. I don't really have a good balance. I actually don't have a good balance. It's gaming all the time. I'm constantly on.
That's a difficult one as well. I mean, if you play board games, it's not that time intensive. If you would compare it with like playing a miniatures game like Warhammer or Song of Fire and Ice or Marvel Origins, you need a lot of time to set a lot of time to learn the rules, how to play and paint and stuff. And then if you get into the trading card games, that's like a time sink. I mean, like a game like Magic the Gathering will take up a lot of time in your life. You'll be searching for decks online. You'd be playing on something like Magic the Gathering Arena, which is a free-to-play game. You can either grind or use your credit card, as they do nowadays. So I find that a lot of people that are trying to stay competitive, especially focusing on Magic the Gathering, you will need about 8 to 10 hours a week to stay good, as they say. So, as a minimum, like it's the same with video gaming. If you get your head out the game, you lose it. So yeah, it's a different type of game because of the competitive nature.
But I think one of the things that helps maintain that balance too is if your friends and family are as interested in the content and the gaming that you are, it's your balance comes to let's play this game together, and then you get to spend your quality time with your family and friends around the table, still playing games, but it's just a change of energy from content creation to socializing.
The guy was asking, he says I was huge into playing D&D in 2nd edition, but I haven't played really much in the past 20 years because I keep moving countries in every couple of years. How has the game evolved, and what is different in D&D in 5th edition? So I played in 2nd edition and 5th edition. Rick, what would you say about the comparisons? It's like a whole different game.
Yeah, it is. Well, role playing is role playing. I don't care what game it is. Role playing is role playing. The mechanics and the ease of entry from 2nd edition to 5th edition are night and day. 2nd edition, when Zeb Cook and Gary Gygax and all those guys made 2nd edition, it was a great game for its time. But again, I think the popularity doesn't just come from the fact that you got like your Matt Mercers and your Joe Manganiellos and Satine Phoenixes and all these celebrities that are big promoters of the hobby, which helps. But the ease of entry, because the rule system is so much easier. The books read so much better. Their layouts are so good.
Well written.
Yeah, they're so well written, and that I think brings that ease of entry in, and that's what's made it so popular. And that's why 5th edition, in my opinion, again, just my opinion. I know some people come at me, but 5th edition for D&D has been the best thing ever for that game.
2 thumbs up.
Yeah,
I agree totally on that.
We lost them again. So let's take a look at a couple other questions. There's some really good ones in here. What are the most popular games in Qatar? Magic, D&D, Warhammer, what else? And then someone asked a question for you, Jason, too. How can one find a regular group to play long campaigns with?
There's a few tabletop gaming groups here in Qatar. We do have our own events, but we very much also promote that you meet up with friends and you join other groups. If you look at campaign-style games, there's a few of them that are playing Imperial Assault. I think you know it, Rick, the Star Wars game. And Gloomhaven. That's another really good game if you like into miniatures and you want to do like a role-playing style of game. And then, yeah, if you have a game that you want to play, it's a very social thing. Ask people, like say I've got like Catan who wants to play, or I've got Gloomhaven who wants to get into a campaign. I think people here are very open, but I do find that sometimes committing to like a regular schedule is difficult. With the COVID restrictions being lifted for us now, since last week, we'll have a roster or a schedule up on Facebook or Instagram for the meetups, and we'll go from there. I know that the Tuesday group that's meeting up in Quick Bites in the Marriott is like on a booking basis only because of the restrictions about the number of people who can sit at a table, and that social distancing interaction. So I think to answer that wholly, it is coming up, but it may take like 2 to 3 weeks to get back into the regular schedule that we have, and to make sure that we can do it safely. This is the main concern.
All right. So there's one last. There's one there that says, speaking of celebs, tabletop gaming. What do you guys think of Will Wheaton's show Tabletop? I thought while it aired, it was great. It was a great way for people to be more invested in the gaming space. It's sad that it doesn't exist anymore. I think Will Wheaton is a great champion for tabletop. And he just got signed on to be the spokesperson for Bicycle Cards, which is now making board games, which is super cool. Yeah.
If you want to suggest something else, you can check out Dice Tower's content.
Yeah.
They do a lot of videos if you're looking for something that's related to new games. Yeah.
We want to segue into the painting portion. So we answered everybody's questions and everything. And now I'm definitely curious to see this. I want to watch it and see what's going on with it. Why have you chosen to do a Song of Fire and Ice for the painting?
So I did a little research and I found out that the TV series Game of Thrones was super popular in Qatar, and I guess when you guys have had different like convention and events, a lot of those celebrities have come to those events. So based on that information is why I chose it. And plus the miniatures are just so freaking good. I will be painting the mountain today. Before we skip out to that, I just like to say something to everybody that's watching. Play more board games, everyone. They are an amazing way to not just increase like your tactical and critical thinking skills, but it's a great way to socialize with your friends and family. And I will guarantee you, there is a game for everybody. Regardless of your interests, there is something that has been made in the tabletop space that you will find that scratches that itch for you, be it true crime stuff to just jokey stuff to party games, trivia. It's all there. The best place to find it is at your friendly local game store, like Jason's location and the other stores that were mentioned earlier in Kuwait and so on. So please go out, play more games. It's the best.
Especially right now with COVID happening and everything else, even if it's just you and your family or you and your wife or brothers, whatever, man, you can definitely get into it, and even if you're not sure which ones you'll like, there's books, there's games that can introduce you into that world and the lore and everything else. And GAG actually delivers here in Qatar, so you don't have to worry about the virus and stuff.
Yep, we had a very busy day with the new Fast and Furious game. So, yeah, that kept me on my toes today. Hope it's going to be good.
And I think what's important is when a place is run by somebody who actually does it and cares about it, it's a big difference. You know what I mean? Like, when I watch your show, Rick, I know it's because you love what you're doing and everything else. And Jason, I know that he loves his stuff. He has to for everything he goes through over here. But I guess we'll go ahead and switch over to you painting the mountain, which should be pretty awesome.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us again here for the Qatar Game Expo. I am Rick of Rick Rolls America. If you are on TikTok, you can find me at Tabletop Santa, all one word. But to get into the whole process of painting miniatures, the first thing we want to talk about is what do you need, right? That's everybody asked that question. It was actually in the questions on the platform here. And what you're going to need is first paints. So I have, and I will be using a lot of Vallejo paints today. They're a company out of Spain. They're amazing paint line, but there are so many other paint companies out there, such as these right here are MSP Bones. So this is by Reaper Miniatures. They make their own paints, and they have some really good paints as well. And then there's also Army Painter War Paints, which make. I like their flesh tones and their shades, so I'll probably use a little bit of these today too. And then, of course, if you're a fan of Warhammer or anything Games Workshop, they prefer that you use their product, which is the Citadel paint line right there. And they come in these little like pots of paint. And I will say this, there are so many paint companies out there besides these ones that I'm talking about that you could literally fill your toolbox up with just a ton of different things, but find the ones that you like. You may like this from Citadel, that from there, and that's how you build your palette, right? It's based on what you like. But I will be using a lot of Vallejo today. The next thing you're going to want, obviously, and that people ask about, are brushes. Yeah, you need a toolbox to put it all in. So the next thing you have are brushes. There are multiple different versions of brushes, different companies. Again, Army Painter, Vallejo, Reaper, they all make their own brush brands. I have a lot of Army Painter brushes in here. There's also I think this is a Citadel right here. So brushes is the next thing, and making sure that you do a lot of brush care afterwards is important, so that the brushes will have a long life. And won't lose their tips. So you can see that I recap them so that they don't get bent based on the way they're put in. So you need brushes. And when you're first starting painting, you don't have to go out and buy the expensive brushes. You can go, if you have a hobby store that sells them on some inexpensive ones, so you can practice. Awesome. I always recommend here in the States, if going and getting a pack of brushes for $24 is outside of your price range, go to Michael's, get a little starter bag. Go to Walmart, they have little starter bags of brushes. They're not great, and they're not going to give you the quality of paint on miniature that you can get with these. Excuse me. But they will work to get you started. Sorry about that. All right, so after you got your paints, you got your brushes, you're going to need a little bit of water to clean your brushes off. You're going to need some paper towel to wipe your brushes off. I'm going to stand up just for a second. I apologize. And then there's some other tools to the trade, because not all miniatures come pre-made. So, like a lot of miniatures from Games Workshop, they come on what's called a sprue, and you have to. And this is where miniatures is also modeling as a hobby. So you're going to need some clippers to clip the miniatures off their sprues, and then you're going to use glue to glue them together, right? Sometimes you're going to need like an X-Acto knife, right? And the reason you're going to use that is because when you get a miniature, and I'll show some of them here. When you get a miniature, you're going to want to inspect it. Sometimes you're going to want to clean them. So wash them with some soap and water, because they're going to have a releasing agent on them. That releasing agent, when you spray your primer and stuff on the miniature, can sometimes make it so it doesn't stick quite proper. So when you're inspecting your miniatures, you're looking for what are called mold lines. And when you find a mold line, you're going to take that X-Acto knife and you're just going to clean it off. Games Workshop also makes a really nice bladed tool that it's not an X-Acto knife. It's a line cleaner, and it's super nice. But that's what you're going to do for your miniatures. Is you're going to clean them up, take off, carve down any mold lines. And another great tool, because when you're putting miniatures together, unlike the CMON ones, sometimes the miniatures don't go quite right together. There's always a potential for error, maybe some warping due to heat. So the miniature won't quite seal. There might be some gapping, right, in the miniature. And then you're going to want to use what's called green stuff, which is Knead-A-Tite, and it's a 2-part epoxy. And you're going to take a little bit of that, and you're going to take the yellow and the blue, and you rub them together. And then you're going to go ahead and you're going to put it in those gaps, seal it off. And then you're going to take the X-Acto knife and a couple other tools to basically rub that down to it so it blends in with the miniature. And after you prime it, which we'll get to next, because priming your miniatures is also super important. When you prime it, then you won't even know that mold or that gapping never existed, and then you're ready to go and you're ready to paint. So, like I said, priming your miniatures is important. There are many videos that show people how to do prime. And today I used Corax White and Gray. Wow, Gray Sear. These are both by Citadel. There's also black primers, and there are multiple colors of primers based on the kind of model or miniature you plan on painting. And I wanted to show you the differences in that. With the Song of Ice and Fire game, the miniatures come in the core box, which is the one I showed earlier, right here, Stark versus Lannister. Now this box All the miniatures are pre-built. They're ready to go right out of the box, and you don't even have to paint them, which is great about that game is because the Lannisters all come in red plastic, and the Starks all come in a greenish gray plastic, so you can immediately play them, and you know which armies are which, and there's no issue. But because we do want to paint the miniatures, and we're here to paint them today, then you prime them. And I used the Gray Sear primer on the Mountain, which is the miniature I'll be painting today, right? I'm going to actually push this down just a little bit. So we're going to use, so I used Gray Sear on the Mountain, and I used Corax White on the Stark miniature there. And you can see, look how big he is. Oh, it's so good. And then this is just a normal person, and he's super tiny too. The Mountain is the best. Anyways, and I also wanted to show, again, the quality of miniatures that you can get. So here is a Stark on a horse, on a cavalry. It's so good. There's and the miniatures are beautiful, and that's why I chose to use these today for painting. I'm going to make some camera adjustments here in a minute once I actually get in it and start showing some techniques. So the Mountain is what we're going to paint, and I might even put some paint on the Stark warrior as well, just because there are going to be opportunities where the Mountain is going to need to dry. Is Thor? Yeah, Thor in Hafthor in Iceland. That dude is ginormous. And what's funny is his brothers are even bigger than him as far as height. It's crazy. But I also, earlier we talked about WizKids miniatures. So I pulled one of these out. This is, again, the Griffin. And the great thing about these for beginner painters is that you don't even need to prime these because they're already pre-primed and ready to go right out of the package. So you just rip it open, go to painting. It's super fun, and they're super inexpensive. These are, and if you like Dungeons and Dragons, these are great. The final thing I wanted to talk about are two other pieces of equipment that are really important. Is your palette, what you're going to put your paints on. I sometimes will use just a piece of cardboard, like an old comic book backboard, or a plastic round palette, right? But there are wet palettes, right? So this is a wet palette by Army Painter, and what's nice about it is it can hold like some of your brushes. They could already be like snapped in here and good to go, right? So everything's taken care of. Super good stuff. But what it has in it is it has this little sponge, right? And then you take one of the sheets here, and it's just like a little piece of wax paper. And you're going to take a little bit of your water, and you're going to pour it into the sponge, and you just kind of, with your finger, you're going to take that water, you're going to try to spread it out over the sponge, right? You might need to put a little bit more in there, which is fine. But you're going to spread that out over the sponge. And what this is going to do is when you put your paint on a wet palette, it's not going to dry out, and the paint will last longer for the model that you're painting. You don't have to waste. It actually is really good for conservation of paint, right? Because the paints aren't inexpensive. They're a couple dollars per little bottle or pot. Then you're going to put the wax paper piece in there, and you're just going to rub that over as well so that the water seeps up into the wax paper, so that, again, it will maintain a level of moisture to the paint so that it doesn't dry out quick. And I will be using my wet palette today because I don't want to waste the paint on the Mountain, because it's a bigger miniature, and it might take some time. On a normal palette, it could dry out. These are plastic miniatures. That's a great question. Yeah, so these are plastic miniatures. They do come in multiple different forms. You can get resin. A lot of companies that make busts of different characters that you can paint use resin for that. But most of it is a form of plastic. And then finally, the last thing after the palette I want to talk about is basing materials. So when you're all said and done with your miniature, and time permitting today, we will not get through it because I just want to talk about basic techniques for ease of entry into the space. But once you're all said and done with your miniature, you're going to want to get some basing material so that you can put that on the base and it gives it a little bit more pop, a little bit more life. So like the mountain, I'd probably put some of this brown sand on there and then a few of these like cork bits that make it look like rocks. And then I'd put some tufts so it looks like there's some greenery on its base as well. And it just takes a miniature from looking good to making it looking great. All right. So based on that, I'm going to make a camera adjustment so that y'all can see more of what's going to happen with the miniature. And then we're going to get to painting this and see how that all goes. So there's that. Here's the miniature. I think that looks good. And I apologize, you have to look at my mid frame here, but such is life. So with the mountain, because he is fully armored up, and that's what's going to make this such a fun paint job as well, is I get to use metallic paints, which Vallejo has some great metallics, right? And we're going to just grab up the neutral gray metallic, and we're going to look at where's my silver, and yeah, silver. Okay. So when you first start painting miniatures, so pewter is old. They don't do pewter anymore. And then it also started out as lead. Yeah, it's crazy. There is a company called Ironwood Studios that has the license for the old Ral Partha miniatures, and they still do cast in pewter lead, but they are super far and few in between. And it's not cost effective. There are lots of mold issues, you're right. So no kit bashing with Game of Thrones, right? Not necessarily, but if you are good at using green stuff and everything, you could do some kit bashing, I guess. And there are, absolutely no Season 8 bashing. The good old days, lead miniatures, melt and mold your own Ral Partha paints. Yeah, I actually really enjoyed, I went to Origins last year, and while I was at Origins, I went to an event, an after-hours event, and there was the owner of Ironwood Studios was there and the table was laden with all of these pewter miniatures that were from the old Ral Partha ones, and they just look so good. All right, so when we get our miniatures, some of the things that are also important is hand positioning when painting. So I like to push the heels of my hands together and bring it up so that I'm stabilized, so I don't have any shaking. You're going to see some shaking because of the table and everything, but I do that, and then I just get in there and I start doing what's called a base coat. So all the major parts of the miniature that have like a lot of surface area, like the armor bits on the mountain, I'm going to go through and I'm going to base it with the color that I want first, and then I'm going to go through and then I'm going to do what's called highlighting, and then after some of the highlighting is done, I may go back and I'll do some shading and then do another round of highlighting, because sometimes the shade will affect my highlights. So I'm going to hit these upper parts, like his pauldrons here and his baldric, the shoulder pads and his helmet, which I know are going to be metallics, right? So I'm going to base those with this gray metal, right? So I'm going to go through and hit those, and that's the biggest part of it is basing, because you want to get the majority of your miniature coverage done quick. If you are like in a speed paint competition, which I actually love entering. So you go through and you're just going to paint all those areas that are going to be metal with the metallic gray base, right? So it's kind of like a gun metal gray. And because he has so much metallic armor on, this is a good basing piece. And you don't have to worry about being perfect. I think that's one of the best things. So they have holders. Citadel makes these little handheld things. And you can also put like sticky tack on the bottom of your miniatures and put those on cork and hold the cork if you'd like. I don't think I actually have one of the model holders here with me right now. I do not. But because a lot of painters, if they were watching and they saw that I was holding the miniature like I am in my hand like this, they'd be like, "Oh my God!" But that was, again, this is not. We're not professionals here today. We're intros, right? So we can do it like this. And this is actually how I prefer, because if I hold the handle, and there are other handles that have like this hook that comes up over, so you can hold it like that, and you can get in there and paint, which is also another nice thing. But yeah, they exist and they're good. The other thing is with the base coating, you don't have to be perfect. And if you've never painted a miniature before in your life, don't expect to be perfect, because I can't think of anything anybody's ever done ever where the first time they ever tried it, they were perfect. All right. So the big thing is just enjoying the process, putting the paint on the miniature, because I'm here with you guys, being able to talk with you. That's also super awesome, right? Just getting the opportunity to chat with some folks, answering questions that pop up in the chat. You can use glue to a plastic bottle and use it as a handle. Absolutely. You can absolutely do that. Glue the base of the miniature to a bottle cap. Like my water bottle here, I could glue them here, and I could just use this as my handle, which I will not do because I still want to drink this water. So we get through, we base out a lot of the metallics. I'm going to also pull out a color. So this is why I actually have a few of the other miniature paints out, because I want to show you how some of the other paints work. Because there are, like, Citadel has a new paint line out called contrast paints, and I want to show you how that works. I'm going to do it on the cloak, and you're going to be like, why didn't I start off with the contrast paints and just use those? And the reason is, certain things I like done a certain way, and as you begin painting your miniatures, you're also going to find that there's going to be certain things that you like done a certain way, right? Which is totally okay. Another thing that is really fun to have, if you can get it, is paint on primer, because as you're doing some of these miniatures and getting them all put together, you may also want to go through and do little touch-ups with your miniature in certain areas, and be like, ooh, I didn't paint inside the lines right here. And you can just take a little bit of the paint primer, make a correction, because that's one of the biggest things about painting miniatures, is it's all about making corrections. Right? So we get our bases on around the areas where there's a lot of metallics. Right? So that's right there's, again, just hitting the base coats, right, of the metallic areas. All right. Now, the thing I want to show you next is on the is the robe here. So the colors for the Lannisters, if you want to stay to theme, are yellow. Right. So the mountain, his inner shield would be a yellow underneath the 3 lions, and his robes would be yellow. I, however, already have this miniature painted in the Lannister colors, so I'm going to do something a little different today. But because I know that what I'm about to show you is going to be more dramatic in its appearance, and show you how the actual paint works for the miniature. And we're going to use some contrast paint. I'm going to use an orange. All right. So this is the Griffhound Orange Contrast by Citadel. All right. And what this does is it has 2 different weighted paint pigments inside it. I'm not going to use a wet palette for this part. And those paint pigments is when let me make a small adjustment here. So those paint pigments are going to settle differently. The lighter paint pigments are going to stay high on the miniature, and the heavier are going to seep into the cracks of the miniature to give it more depth and presentation. Old Luke Skywalker asks, what if you are unhappy with the paint job you have done? How can you remove paint? There, you can take different cleaning agents such as Simple Green. You can soak the miniature and that'll help get the acrylic paint off of it. But the thing is, the great thing about miniatures and paint is if you don't like it, you can just respray it with primer and paint it again, because the paints aren't so thick that you're going to lose any definition really. But if you need to actually clean your miniature, soak them in Simple Green, scrub them with a very, very soft bristle brush, like toothbrush, to get all the paint off, and then reprime it, and then you can paint again. All right, so I'm going to grab a couple more brushes here. I need a little bit bigger one for this next little. There we go. So I'm going to use a monster brush for this next process. So I'm going to take the contrast. I'm going to hold it up here, and to show you how this looks and works. So again, you're just going to paint it on as though you're just doing a base coating over the high surface area of the cloak. But what you're going to see is once this is all said and done with this particular type of paint, the contrast paints, you almost don't even have to do anything else. It's literally, it's cheating in a bottle in a good way. I'm just going to hit the back here, and then I'm going to turn it around and kind of show you what it looks like once you've used this paint. And it's so good. I'm a big fan of Vallejo. Vallejo's paints are my preferred paint for miniature painting. But when it comes to again, the toolbox, and you shouldn't just, keep yourself to one paint. The toolbox, these contrast paints by Citadel are just super good. And like I said, I'm just going to do the back of the cloak real quick. I'm almost done. And then I'm going to show you this so you can see how this works and looks. Here we go. And remember, this is one coat of contrast paints. And it already looks freaking great. Look at that. Because like I said, the heavier dense pigments stay in the cracks to give it that depth. And once this dries, it's going to have that immediate and automatic shading and highlighted effect on the miniature. So that is one of the great things about using contrast paints, is they look so good right off the bat. And then what I would do, it's a great cheat. Then what I would do is, if I wanted to highlight, like obviously his belt right there isn't going to be the same color as his cloak, so I just go back with Vallejo paints, and I would paint that belt the other color that would be required for this miniature to look, so it doesn't look like it's all monochromatic in certain areas. But yeah, and I'm just going to add some more of this on here. It's such a good, like I said, it's such a good tool to have in your toolbox for painting, is the Citadel contrast paints. And then the next thing I'm going to show you all after I get, again, because this is just a basic entry to painting course, I guess we could say. I'm going to show you a couple other really fun techniques. The next one will be dry brushing. And we're going to use dry brush silver to highlight the shield. So you can see how that would take from this gunmetal gray, a very dull color, and when you dry brush the silver on it, it's going to make it highlighted and pop, because of the different, the texture tones are going to just pop off that miniature. I'll probably throw some dry brush spots on like his arm and his helmet as well. Again, just to show you how all that will look and give the miniature a little bit more definition and character. And for those of you that are watching, there are multiple levels of painting as far as like what people do in the hobby. You have me. I consider myself a hobbyist slash table ready painter. So when my miniatures are done and I can put them on a table and I can see them from 3 feet away, they look pretty good and they're easily playable, right? Then there are commission painters who basically make a living from painting miniatures, and their quality of miniature painting is usually really, really good. And then after that is your absolute pro painters. And then so pro painters are like just ridiculously good. They compete in big competitions all over the world. GW has some, CMON has some, and there's a big one in Italy. I can't remember right off the top of my head what it is. I am not that level, and those guys are just, and gals are just ridiculously good at the hobby that they've mastered. So I like being a hobbyist table ready painter. I don't think I could ever do commission work because if I did, I'd get lost in it and nobody'd see any weird content. So I'd prefer just to paint my miniatures for tabletop play. And I think that's what most people find themselves in is once they get into the hobby. But when you find yourself in those other levels of painting, the community is super weird and awesome. And it's a lot of fun. All right. So I'm going to really quick throw some more of this gray on the other metallic areas, like his sword here is supposed to be a gray as well. So, or metallic. So I'm going to just really quick, just throw some paint on his sword. And when I do the dry brushing technique here, that might actually be another area that can pop as well. I see you guys talking in the chat about getting your hands on some Citadel. I saw some YouTube videos using Daily Roundy acrylic inks and Liquitex acrylics. Yeah, so Liquitex is another great company. I don't have any. I've painted with them at a show before. They're good. They're really good. There's another one called Turbo Dork paints, which has some really cool like shifter paints, so that when you look at them one way and then shift them a little bit, the way the light strikes them, they change a different hue. Those are really good for like cars or vehicles that you might paint if you get into like some of the bigger, like Warhammer has vehicles that would look really good with some shifters on it, I think. And Vallejo also makes some shifter paints now as well. So there's a lot of, like I said, a lot of tools that you can throw in your toolbox with all the different companies that make paint. All right, so again, I'm using the Vallejo paint right now with this gray on the miniature. There we go. And that looks good. I'm just gonna try to get a little bit more. There's another spot where I need to put a little bit more orange in there. I'm gonna hit that up. Send me a message. It says, but for Citadel and Vallejo, we're trying to get in touch with them. Yeah, Vallejo. If you need a contact at Vallejo, I can just message me. I can get you Michelle. She's the marketing and sales manager for Vallejo, and see what they can do with y'all. As far as Citadel, I have some contacts there, but I don't know as far as like distribution to your guys' region. Miniac, Goobertown, Midwinter Minis, Squidmar miniatures. I just got the Squidmar brushes I got off Kickstarter. They're great. Gamza for terrain, Black Magic Crafts. Also have Black Magic Crafts. Any starter kits available in Geeky Games. Vallejo shifters are awesome. Yes. I'm not sure about Geeky. I don't think they have them. So like these starter boxes that I have with the Vallejo stuff are really nice, but there are some even more basic starter boxes that Reaper makes. They're small little kits, has a miniature, has the paints and a again, paint by numbers guide as to where each paint goes on the miniature, so that you can follow along and do that. And they make videos based on each kit. WizKids has got kits coming out as well. Paint and Take WizKids boxes, and Army Painter with Gale Force 9 makes starter boxes as well. They have from your basic starter to the monster starter to the mega paint kit. So there's a lot of options out there for getting into the hobby in that beginner sense as well. All right, so we've done that. We're gonna let it dry just for a second. If you have any questions about miniature painting, please ask. I'm all about answering them as best as I can. I want to, as y'all heard in the previous bit, I do like talking about miniatures and gaming, so I can get caught up pretty quick in that. So also, yeah, I mean, you could obviously, if you want to watch some of my content, I do some painting videos. I do a lot of stuff on TikTok right now. I kind of fell down that hole. I'll be making more content for YouTube, and then on the Rick Rollz America Facebook page, I also do a bunch of live streaming there as well. But I will say this: I do have something coming up called Geek House Live, so stay tuned. That's going to be I'm actually putting together an entire house that's going to have live streaming going on all the time for a lot of different stuff. Is there a collectible market for old miniatures? There are, actually. And the biggest one that has the biggest collectible market for miniatures is Citadel or Games Workshop. A lot of people like the older models to paint up and have on display. Some of them have some really nice price points. As far as like the old Reaper stuff, or not Reaper, but Ral Partha, I'm not sure if there's truly a market. Where you find a collectible market in miniatures is, I have a miniature painted by Rick from Rick Rollz America, signed by him on the bottom. Or Dave Taylor from Dave Taylor Miniatures, or a miniature from the Rogue Shader. So having a miniature painted by a professional or by an influencer, I guess you could say, can add to its collectability. Because the great thing again about miniatures being painted by true artists of the, not me, but true artists of the hobby, means that that's a one-of-a-kind job, right? The way that they painted this miniature for you will not be the same way and come out the exact same way as a miniature they may pay for someone else. So when you get a miniature by a pro painter or an influencer, that's a one-of-a-kind paint job on a miniature, right? So that's a good way to consider it being collectible. But also they have limited edition models like Gale Force 9 has miniatures that are limited to like only 2,500 of this model will ever be made, or 1,500 or 1,000 or 750. So there's another thing. Or if you get like con exclusive miniatures, like Games and Gears has made Gen Con miniatures every year that you can only get at Gen Con. And other companies do that as well. So limited edition miniatures add to the collectability. Old Citadel or old Games Workshop miniatures are collectible, and then individually one-of-a-kind painted miniatures by influencers and pros make it collectible. So it will be like a TikTok house, but who's to say there won't be any annoying dances? Who doesn't want to watch this guy dance to the Savage? No, so every room at Geek House Live will be set up for studio production, except for the bedrooms and the bathrooms. So all the common rooms, the living room, the dining room, the family room, the basement, the kitchen, will all be set up so that I'll be doing geek-themed cooking shows. I'll be doing live stream gaming, unboxings, toys, comics, everything. It's going to be wild. It's going to also be where people who are content creators that are traveling, if they want to stop in, I have 2 spare bedrooms. They can stop in, stay a few days, make content, have fun, have access to all the weird stuff I've got as far as tabletop stuff, so that they can be like, okay, I want to run a game featuring this big, the ship from WizKids, this Fallen Star. So it's gonna be like that. It's gonna be blessed. Yep, tabletop sessions. I'll be doing live stream tabletop gaming and live stream role playing games where people can come into a Zoom call and play with me, and we'll live stream it. So anybody in the world, it's like, hey, I want to play in a one shot D&D with you. Done. Let's make it happen. Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun. Sweet. All right, so the miniature is relatively dry in the spaces. I want to now do some highlighting, some dry brushing. And because I'm going to dry brush, I'm not going to put the silver on the wet palette. I'm just going to put a little bit on my paper towel. All right, let me shake this up because I don't want it to be like just liquid. You know, there's a liquid in there that can be a little bit like not enough pigment. It's just the worst. All right, and then I'm going to grab a dry brush. I know I have a bazillion of them. There we go. So a dry brush a lot of times has a sharp angle at the tip, and it's a little bit shorter bristles, and sometimes they're even shorter than this. And but that's and the reason why is because you want a little bit of a shorter, tougher bristle. And let me make a small camera adjustment again. So on the paper towel, I'm going to just take a little bit off there. I'm going to take it over to this part. I'm just going to wipe it away on the paper towel until it almost doesn't come off anymore. So that's like totally off the brush, and you barely see any on there. And then you're going to take your brush and going against the grain of the miniature. You're going to just lightly brush that silver across those areas, right? So I'm not going to paint along the same line. I'm going to go against the line, and that's going to cause it to just hit those highlighted spaces across the miniatures, grooves and stuff. So it pops off, and I'm going to do it again over these lions so that there's a little silver on the edges of the lions, and it's going to pop off the miniature. So it gives it depth and character, and it just looks amazing. So when I show you in the close-up, something as simple as dry brushing makes that look so much better, right? It's an amazing technique that doesn't require a high skill level. And there are actually painters that say, I don't dry brush at all. I'm all about painting up the layers to get to that same kind of effect. I, again, am not a pro painter. I only want to get my miniatures ready for the tabletop, and that's a great way to get them to have some character, some depth, and still look really good. And I'm going to do it again to the pauldrons and to his arms and to his helmet. So give you another quick shot of what it looks like before dry brush, what it looks like after, right, on the shield. So let's do those pauldrons, arms, across those the high points of the miniature to give it just that nice depth change and make the miniature pop out and gives it a lot more character than a base color. And I'm just taking them, just dry brushing off, like I said before, off the edge. And then on the sword, what I'm going to do is I can do the same thing, just hit the edge opposite of the blade. But what I'm going to do is instead of like rubbing it this way, I'm actually going to run the edge like that on each side. So it's going to give that look of a sharpened blade. Okay. Give it on the other side there. And then we're going to go ahead and do some dry brushing across the face of the helmet, and it's got like a chain coif underneath. And we'll hit across that one more time here. And yeah. So again, you can see the difference in what it looked like previously to now when it has the highlights. It's kind of interesting. My landlord just asked me, where did I learn my painting techniques from? That's a great question, actually, and I'm surprised nobody has it in there. It makes me heart sad. No, I'm just kidding. Like mustard. It's like watching a bigger Bob Ross with less hair. Yeah, I'm a bigger Bob Ross with less hair. I actually used to have a show called Painting Happy Little Minis, where I would wear a Bob Ross wig and paint miniatures live twice a week. Anyways, where did I learn my techniques? First, I first learned how to paint from my grandmother when I was very little. She owned a ceramic shop. And, so I learned how to like pour ceramics and all that when I want to say like when I was 8 or 9 years old. I was helping her pour the slip into the molds. And then she started teaching me how to do some painting when I was really young. Then I watched other painters when I go to different hobby stores when I was older, like when I was in the military. Every time you go to a new store, there's always like a really good house painter, and I'd always ask questions and sit down with them and paint some miniatures and get some good tips there. But to tell you the truth, where I've learned the most about miniature painting was I had the opportunity on Painting Happy Little Minis. My co-host was Dave Taylor. Dave Taylor is possibly one of the best pro painters in the world. He is amazing. He's a great educator. And I got to sit next to him for 3 years and watch him do his art. And that, as a benefit to my abilities, is unimaginable. The value add that gave my skill set. I was already okay then, and I'm still, in my opinion, just okay in comparison. But his tutelage, his guidance, everything, his demeanor, his patience really helped build my skill sets up. And if Dave is watching or should ever see this, thank you, Dave. You were amazing. He's actually one of my best friends. And anyways, no more waxing poetic on this. But yeah, so Dave Taylor is absolutely the reason I have the skill sets I have today. So we've gone through, we even did the legs there, put some silver around the legs, right? And now all the metallic areas are dry brushed and a little bit highlighted as well. I had a little bit too much on the bottom there, so that's an easy fix. I'll just take a little bit of that base gray and I'll just paint over it. Fixed. All right, so that's dry brushing with a little bit of highlighting. Now, after you're all done with your miniature in regards to the dry brushing and the highlighting and the base coating, then you're going to go and you're going to start doing your fine detail painting. Your fine detail painting is going to be the most, you consider it tedious part of the paint because you're going to be using brushes that have tips like that. I don't even know if you can see the tiny little brush bristles there. There's very few. So this right here is called the insane detail brush. So you're going to be taking a brush like this. And the reason I like this particular one is because it is triangulated instead of a round handle. And when it's triangulated, when you hold it in your hand, it's not going to potentially roll in your fingers because you don't want to mess up, because this is going to be the brush where, here, I'm going to move the camera again. I apologize. Down a little bit. So this is the brush that you're going to use when you're going to get into these very small detailed areas. Like there's a back band here that goes across his back, and it, paint some leather and then paint the dots. There's some riveted dots across his back. Again, back to the belt. You're going to want to use that to get that belt so the paint stays in that small area. There's even some other spots like on his legs. Even his helmet for possible little highlights. And so there's just small areas where this brush is going to help get some details. So like even on like his legs here and here in his van brace and his rear brace on his arm, hitting these small little like rivets, and they're with like another metallic, like a tinny tin or a brass or a bronze, to give it a different color and also give it, again, more character, more depth, more pop. So that's what the fine detail brushes are going to help you with. I'm actually going to take this dab here and I'm going to get up under his arm. I missed a little bit under there. So I just want to hit that up. There we go. So yeah, and then on the front, he's got the belt buckle. And again, you're not going to use a big bristled brush on a belt buckle. So you're going to use those fine detail brushes to hit those small areas. So that, again, it'll give your character and your miniature more depth, more separation of space, which is really good. I apologize. I'm just seeing little imperfections, and it's making me like, I should probably go in and touch that area up a little bit. But what's good about it, it's in spots like up in the arm crotch that you can't really see anyway. So I got a little paint on me. The hazards of painting. So there, yeah. So that's basically how that would all work. The detail brush is going to make those things happen there, and I'm going to go ahead and grab a color. I'm going to grab a brown, and I'm going to make a few little detailed spots happen here. Not that color, don't like it. Not for this project. Yeah, I'm going to grab another paint color here. I got mahogany brown. I think mahogany brown is going to work just fine. Watered down glue for base them, add your dirt and stuff last. So you can. I know. So you're going to use like the Elmer's glue type of glue, and you're going to just take. I use like a brush like this, or one that's a little bit smaller than this, that has the same kind of rough bristles, and I'll put the glue on, and I'll just kind of push it along the base until the entire base is covered, and then I take the miniature and I dip it into the little cup, right? And I shimmy it around, and then I pull it out, and that'll give me those bases effect, the start of the base effect. And then I take a little bit of that Elmer's glue and I'll put it on a paper plate or on a hard palette, not a wet palette. And then I will take the tufts of green or the smaller bits that look like stone, but it's actually just cork. I'll use a pair of tweezers. I'll grab it, I'll dip it in the glue, and then I'll place it along the base to add that extra texture and extra effect. And I personally do that last. I do know that there are some painters, after they prime their miniature and do their base coating, that they will do their base, then they'll do their highlights. Because sometimes after you've put your base on, after you've done you put your base paints on your miniature, then you do the basing effect on the miniature, and the color scheme of the basing effect can sometimes influence and actually augment the colors you may use in your highlights and more defined aspects of your miniature paint afterwards. So I personally don't do that, but I've seen individuals that do, and I think those individuals tend to lean into the pro space. Old Luke Skywalker's question. That is a great question. And if you're colorblind or color deficient, I would say, first, I would apologize for the industry not being able to provide a better source for you or individuals that have that particular issue in their life. Yeah, it's a tough one, because being colorblind, you can miss a whole range of spectrum of colors that would have been the correct choice. And if you are colorblind or color deficient, you don't even know what that color, as far as using color theory, might look, or how that effect will be on the miniature, based on guessing. Outside of, like, you can read it obviously and say, this is supposed to be mahogany brown, belts should be brown, I'm going to use this. not knowing if it's the right brown you want or not. I think it is a lot of let's just go for it. But because they are labeled to give you an idea of what the color should be, and what we as, what we put a normative on different things as far as what certain colors should be on certain clothing type pieces, that might help make it so that it's easier for them to paint. But it's a good question, and I apologize if I did not give you the best answer. Colorblind friendly, palette blue-red or blue-brown would also work for the most common conditions of CVD. All of these work well since blue would generally look blue to someone with CVD. Yeah, or you could just end up with the pink Spider-Man like Jason mentioned earlier, which probably looked pretty cool, and I would be upset if I saw that. So as a final, because we're getting right, we've only got like 2 more minutes left. Let me just again adjust. So that's, and I hope that was a lot of good information that you guys and gals and everybody in the chat were able to at least get a good base of appreciation and understanding of how miniature painting is achieved. The fact that you do not need to be the best the first time out. You don't need to be the best the 50th time out. You just need to have fun, enjoy the hobby, and put at least 3 different colors on your miniature if you're going to put it on a table. That's like a Games Workshop rule for tournament play of Warhammer. All right. Ricky or Ricky. What's up, brother?
Yeah, I was just sitting here watching, man.
Did you learn anything? Did it help?
Yeah, I definitely did. Between you and that other one I watched the other day, I learned a lot. It's really made me want to do it. I mean, I want to play the game. Like, I want to do, like, Kill Team and stuff. I want to get both. I want to get 40K and I want to get the other one because you can do so much, especially if you start, like, kit bashing and everything. I'm not, like, this crazy good artist, but I have painted before and that kind of stuff. And, watching you and watching this guy, Marcus, I'm like, I think I could do that,
Absolutely.
And the thing is, you make it pretty simple to understand and stuff, because I think it could be pretty daunting and intimidating to people. But, having watched you sit there and get all of that done in such a short amount of time, for me, it doesn't seem daunting. It seems like this is my time to sit down and just put on some nice soft music and do my thing and forget about everything else and everybody else. And I'm not running around in a game shooting people in the face. It's just this nice, relaxing thing. As much as you want to put into it is how much you get out of it. To me, like, the more detail you put into it and stuff, the more it matters to you. So when you go to somebody's house or whatever, depending on what's going on with Corona, and you put that on the table and they're like, oh man, let me check that out. You know what I mean? Like, it's something you can be proud of.
Absolutely. We got a good question here. Says, does Rick have a painting soundtrack? I do. I listen to either Dungeon Master Radio on Pandora, a wide mix of different types of music, or I listen to the Lord of the Rings or Skyrim soundtracks.
Yeah, those are good.
Yeah. For everybody that watched, I hope this, again, was super educational for you. I hope that you guys and gals got some good information that you can take to your table and enjoy the painting and just, again, join our hobby and have fun in it. It's such a welcoming space, and I want to see more people at our table. I actually want to play some games with you, Enrique. Whatever we can get together, man.
That'd be cool.
play something, right?
Yeah, man. And I think too the difference between, like, because a lot of people, and this is a question that I would ask, is if I'm a hardcore gamer, which obviously I am, why would I want to go over to this? And what's the difference in the communities of, say, like a game like Overwatch and the people who do tabletop?
Okay, so I think a reason someone might want to, like, take a break from playing Overwatch or Fortnite or any of those other video games, Apex Legends, all those fun things, is because the benefit of sitting down and playing a miniature skirmish game like Warhammer or Kill Team or Gravespire or Ice and Fire that I just painted is this: the human interaction of your opponent across from you, being able to see their body language and their excitement in the play, and just having a true human interaction that you can see and sometimes smell. But I think just the more human interaction is why coming to the table is a good break from video game digital formats, and plus it's better for your eyes.
What's the worst tabletop etiquette?
The biggest one is being a sore loser and being a bad winner. You can be both. The reason we play games is to have fun, and if we can keep it that way, let's keep it that way. But don't be a bad loser and don't be a bad winner. Be good.
Let your win do the talking for you.
Yeah, and be humble. Being humble at the table is also nice. I mean, sure, you can be like, "Oh, I got you this time," or like, "It seems weird that I have 10 wins and you have 4." That's weird to me. But if you're playing for money and or whatever at like big tournaments, for Magic the Gathering, there are still money tournaments like $1,000 Grand Prix.
Yeah, for sure.
Stuff like that. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see some of the competitive tabletop games fall into some esport like events in the near future. Like I could see Kill Team being a esport thing, especially if you have good people have good on-camera personalities that can keep viewers engaged, and of course, if you have great announcers, so
guys with good beards.
yeah, they got to have epic beards on the male side, and then the women's side, they just got to be aggressive and killers. There's a lot of potential, I think, for that crossover even in the esports space.
But yeah, I'm definitely interested in learning more and doing more. I mean, I was already, but now I really am. So
awesome.
I think afterwards, I'll probably reach out to you and talk to you a
Please.
little bit. Yeah, I was gonna say, if anybody wants to watch you, talk to you, that kind of thing, where should they go?
So the best place to go is on Facebook or Twitter. You can look up Rick Rollz America, Rick Rollz with a Z, America. You can find me on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. But if you have to be on TikTok, I do make a lot of TikTok videos and content, and I am known as Tabletop Santa on there. And I view social media as anything. If you like what I do and let's say TikTok goes away or any of them go away, there will be another social media platform, and I'll be either Rick Rollz America or Tabletop Santa on either one of them.
And then if you guys want to check out Jason, it's Geeks and Games Qatar. So, and again, if you're looking to try any of the stuff that we talk about, a lot of the board games and stuff Jason has, or he could probably get for you. So,
yeah.
And speaking of girl gaming, next week, you guys make sure you sign up for the next workshop, because we're going to have world famous gamer and cosplayer Elodia, which would be really cool. And then we're going to have local female gamer and singer Sachi Gomez, which will be really cool. So it's basically going to be girls' night out. Me and the girls just talking about games.
That's going to be awesome.
So we have somebody pretty with us this week, and then we'll have somebody pretty with us next week.
It's you. Perfect.
But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks, as always, to Qatar Games Expo for giving us something interesting to do and see during this time of social distancing and introducing us to all these amazing people. Awesome. You included, obviously.
Nice.